Hello and welcome to Runkle of the Bailey. My name is Ian Runkle. I'm a Canadian criminal defense and firearms lawyer. A lot of you have asked me for my thoughts and analysis on the fight between Ethan Klein and BBTV. Now this is going to be a Canadian case because BBTV is a Canadian company and there's a choice of laws clause in the contract that requires them to be heard here in Canada, in British Columbia to be specific. Now, what is going on here? Well, Mr. Klein runs some very successful YouTube channels with literally millions of subscribers. And BBTV is what we call a multi-channel network. Now, what these are is they sign up various YouTube creators and they promise certain benefits in exchange for a cut of the money. Now, I've been approached by a few of these, and I can tell you, when I first saw them, I thought they were a scam, because I came to YouTube fairly late. I'd never heard of these things, and it just seemed fishy as all heck. Now, the reason why is because of how these things work. A multi-channel network isn't like hiring somebody to, fix your deck or something, because your work pays you money, and then you pay that person to do the work. Whereas a multi-channel network actually kind of steps in between you and YouTube, so that YouTube, instead of paying you directly, pays this multi-channel network, and then they take whatever cut that they feel that they're owed and send you the remaining money. They, in exchange, they promise all sorts of services, and when I was looking into it, it really didn't look like it was worth it. They're like, hey, we'll look at your analytics. Okay, I can look at them. Or, hey, we'll do copyright clearing. I do that myself. So that all seemed like a real scammy kind of thing, but they're apparently kind of semi-legit. In this case, however, there is a big dispute, and the dispute is over membership income. So when you sign up and, if you look down below, there's that little, join button where you can become a member, and it costs a certain amount, per month. And basically, Mr. Klein says that he's entitled to 100% of that money, whereas BBTV says, no, you're only entitled to 70% of that money. And that 30% difference works out to more than $600,000. So this is not a small dispute. All right, so now that we've got a little bit of background, I'm just going to mention here, when I mentioned that I was going to be talking about this, apparently a lot of you have very strong feelings about Mr. Klein. And I can say, I don't really know much about him. I've watched 3 of his videos, and all of them were related to this dispute so that I could have a better understanding. And so I don't know if he's a saint or a sinner or what, and it's completely irrelevant to my legal analysis. I can say that there's places where I think he's wrong, and there's places where I think he's right, and I don't really care, about anything else here because I'm just here to do some legal discussion. All right, so yeah, I'm sure there's going to be people in the comments with strong opinions one way or the other. As I said, irrelevant to my legal analysis here. Okay, so let's talk about this because it is fundamentally a contractual dispute. And so what we're going to need to know is what's in the contract. What does the contract actually say? What does it give each party? Because this is very critical. So here's sort of our fundamental issue, is that there's 2 kinds of bucket basically that we can look at, and revenue that is coming from YouTube or coming from wherever in the universe actually is going to fall into one of these different buckets. And the one that Ethan Klein wants it to fall into is this one right here. It says Google net revenue. BBTV will pay you an amount equal to 100% of Google net revenue received by BBTV from your videos on your YouTube channels. So you can see why Mr. Klein wants the money to be in this bucket, because he gets 100% of that bucket and BBTV gets nothing. Conversely, you can see why BBTV probably doesn't want things to be in this particular category. But this isn't the only category, and one of the critical ones that we'll see, because the other categories are ones where BBTV does get a cut. And so one of the critical ones here that we're going to have to look at is this one right here that I'll just bring up here. So your revenue, additional revenue, and the critical bit here is section 3 here. 70% of other net revenue, or as the parties may agree upon in writing on a case-by-case basis. Now, if you've watched Mr. Klein's videos, he talks about this one, and frankly, I think his analysis of this clause is wrong. What he says is that this requires that they agree in writing before they do the split. And that, to me, is not the correct interpretation. This says 70% of other net revenue, or as the parties may agree upon in writing on a case-by-case basis. So it's 70% of other net revenue as a default, and they can agree to different amounts. So if they had worked together and negotiated some different amount, either higher or lower, then that would be the term. But if there is no agreement, then this other net revenue category pays to Mr. Klein at 70%, and of course BBTV gets to keep 30%. As mentioned, the 30% in this particular case is over $600,000, which is a lot of money. So you can see why there's a fight here. Now, as with most things, this contract provides a lot of definitions. And if you've watched my channel before, you know that I really think it's important to get into the definitions. It's really critical. There's parts where Mr. Klein describes this as technicalities, and this isn't technicalities. This is the substance of the agreement between the two parties. So let's have a look here. And it starts off with, this is our sort of starting point, is Google net revenue. We're going to look at that. So it says for any period means the revenue earned and actually received by BBTV in such period from Google Ads and Google subscriptions with respect to your content on YouTube, less the following amounts charged, levied, paid, or payable in relation to such revenue. A, taxes other than net income taxes and other government levies. B, the Google fee, if any, to the extent not deducted prior to BBTV's receipt of such revenue. And C, the rights fee, if any. So basically, Google net revenue is everything from Google Ads and Google subscriptions, minus certain costs, and notably like rights fees. So if you had to license something, you might have to pay a rights fee and that kind of thing. But that's a great category. Now, we're going to break it down a little bit further and look at some sub-definitions here, because we want to know what Google Ads and Google subscriptions actually mean, and those are defined. So Google Ads means an ad sold by Google with respect to your videos or your channels on YouTube. Great. Ad revenue, we know what that is. That's real simple. Now, the question here is going to be whether a Google subscription includes a membership. And this is important. This is a tough question in some ways. And I say it's a tough question. We're going to get to an answer, at least one that I'm pretty confident in. But the important thing to note here is that this agreement was made before memberships were a thing, before they existed. There wasn't the option to set up a membership. There wasn't the option to join a membership. It didn't exist. So we're going to have to see if this definition will still include the memberships, even though that definition didn't exist. And again, I'm sort of criticizing Mr. Klein's analysis, although I think we're going to get to the same conclusion. He noted that, how can this contract cover something that doesn't exist? Well, contracts will often cover things that don't exist yet. And frankly, Mr. Klein wants it to cover this thing that doesn't exist, because if it doesn't, then it's going to fall into that other net revenue box, which is really where he doesn't want that money to be landing. So the term on that one, the definition says Google subscriptions means a subscription-based service on YouTube offered or facilitated by Google, whereby end users may access your videos, the timing and selection of which is at such end user's discretion, and for which the end user is charged a predetermined periodic fee to access such content as often as the end user selects during the period covered by the fee. For the avoidance of doubt, Google subscriptions includes the Google branded service YouTube Red and any successor or replacement thereof. So YouTube Red is now YouTube Premium. And the way that works is that if you sign up for YouTube Premium, you don't see ads anymore. And so instead, when you watch a video like this one, you don't see the ads, but I get a cut of the amount that you would pay to YouTube Premium. So that's really what they had in mind with Google subscriptions. But they wrote a very broad definition, right? A subscription-based service, so something you got to sign up for, offered or facilitated by Google. That seems to be included in, in this, because certainly if you click that membership join button there, you'll see that it comes up with a thing from Google. That's who you're going to pay. So that seems to me to be offered or facilitated by Google. Whereby end users may access your videos. Yep, the timing and selection of which is at such end users' discretion, and for which they are charged a predetermined periodic fee. Well, all of that sounds like membership here, right? To access such content as often as the end user selects during the period. So if I make members only content and put it up on my channel, you guys can watch that whenever you want. That really seems to me to be falling within the definition of Google subscriptions. Now, if I was BBTV's lawyer, I'd be saying, listen, it can't include that because we were actually, we didn't contemplate this because this didn't exist at the time. So how can it be within Google subscriptions? But it certainly seems like it falls into that category, right? That seems like that definition actively captures Google subscriptions. Now, there's another sort of critical portion here because we want to also look at the other net revenue, right? That's that category where where BBTV gets that 30% cut. The definition of that is other net revenue for any period means the revenue earned and actually received by BBTV in such period from the distribution, monetization, and/or exploitation of your content in a manner other than through the sale of Google ads, Google subscriptions, direct ads, other platform ads, or branded entertainment arrangements, but includes revenue earned and actually received by BBTV in connection with your content from, with respect to other platforms, subscription fees, and from, with respect to any platform, including YouTube, rentals, in-app purchases, download-to-own methods of monetization, and the monetization of claimed content, less all of those taxes and fees and so forth that applied to the other one. Now, I actually think that this clause really hurts BBTV in the analysis here. And the reason why is because one of BBTV's arguments, in fact, this is the argument that I expect them to make, is to say, listen, we only included Google ads and Google subscriptions in the stuff that Klein would get that 100% cut of. And everything else in the universe, we get some portion of. And so because this is something that was never contemplated, this is something new, it goes into this other net revenue sort of container. And, they will specifically say, listen, when we defined Google subscriptions, we were talking about this in the context of YouTube Red, which is now YouTube Premium, which functions in this very specific way. And it was never intended to capture anything like memberships. Mr. Klein sort of says, well, if it's not intended to capture memberships, then it would go into the Google net revenue category, which isn't really how the contract works. The contract works of, if YouTube developed some new form of monetization, like let's say it allowed for mining Bitcoin on the computers of people who watched videos. YouTube, please don't do that. But let's say they did that, then it would probably go into this other net revenue category and not the Google net revenue category. So that would be bad for Mr. Klein. But when we are trying to interpret what a Google subscription means or looks like, one of the things that I think is going to be a real problem for BBTV is this aspect of, with respect to other platforms, subscription fees. And the reason why is that they've said for other platforms that are not Google, subscription fees would be other net revenue, but that implies that for Google, those subscription fees would be part of that Google subscriptions, Google net revenue category. And the uniqueness of how YouTube Premium and YouTube Red work doesn't apply at all to those other platforms. In fact, when we look at something like if you sign up for HBO on cable, and I know I'm kind of dating myself here, but there's various sort of subscription fees or subscription models out there that have existed for however long. If you want to get really old, we can talk about, if you subscribe to a magazine or a newspaper, the ones where they would physically deliver it to your house. Those are all situations where, you sign up for basically a membership in something and then they send you the stuff. They let you access the stuff. So because of that, it really seems that that argument about Google subscriptions is going to be weakened. And I actually think that this is potentially a really bad thing for BBTV. In fact, ultimately, I think that the assessment on this one is very clear. I think Mr. Klein should win this one, and to a degree that I think that BBTV has blundered, because BBTV has made Mr. Klein very, very angry. Very angry, and we'll talk a little bit about that. Mr. Klein noted that, he trusted these people. And there is a certain amount of trust here in the sense that if you're letting somebody basically take your paycheck, that's a fair bit of trust. If it's, hey, I've got your paycheck, I'm going to take my cut out of it and then give it to you, that's a really trusting thing. And, he noted that they said all these things about trust, and he points to this moment.
Incredible CEO, Shahrzad Rafati, who just in 2021 had this fantastic interview. She says she's sharing why ethical business decisions are good business decisions. Well, I guess a lot's changed since 2021, Shahrzad?
I would not say that that's a thing that says, hey, I should trust this person. I'd actually say that's a red flag because, Trudeau does not really have a great history in terms of, ethics himself. That's a really funny kind of clip there. All right, so now there are some sort of issues here. One issue is this criminal conduct by BBTV? And I think the answer is no. This is a contract dispute, and ultimately, I think that they have an argument. I don't think it's a good argument. I think it's a losing argument, but I don't think that they're going to get to the level where you could make out something like fraud. And certainly it wouldn't be theft. I mean, if there was going to be a criminal charge, fraud would be what you'd look at, and I don't think this is anywhere near fraud. What I think that this is it's a bad interpretation of a contract, real bad, and that ultimately I think they're going to lose. But so because of that, it is a little risky to start throwing allegations of criminal conduct at them. And Mr. Klein certainly has. And there's going to be some disputes over this because we may actually see a countersuit for defamation. And the interesting thing on that will be a question of jurisdiction. First of all, because Mr. Klein is in the States, which has much better protections against defamation than, say, Canada does. And so the question is, will a British Columbia court take jurisdiction over that? Now, I suspect that Mr. Klein's assets are not in Canada, and therefore hard for a Canadian court to go after. However, some of those assets are the $600,000 that he's very likely owed. And so the court might decide that there was, if they find defamation, which is possible. Mr. Klein makes some very strong comments, and although he prefaces them with, in my opinion,
as I'm trying to be as safe and respectful and above board as possible. That's why there will never be a frame here that says in Ethan's opinion, so that if they can never claim, they never get a single fucking frame of me that doesn't say in my opinion. Everything I'm saying is in my opinion.
In my opinion is not a magic cure-all. You can't just slap it on every statement and make it sort of defamation proof. If I say, in my opinion, Joe Schmo of, 12 Fictional Street likes children and has an STD and gives that STD to children, he could probably sue me for defamation, even though I said, in my opinion, right? So you got to be careful with all of this because there are some concerns, and Mr. Klein is not my client, but if he was, I'd be saying, whoa, dude, back off. Let's get your money, especially because in terms of damages, if defamation is made out, I suspect that this is a company that could probably establish damages as a result of that, because if you are sort of relying on this position of trust between you and creators, If somebody damages that reputation, it could destroy your company. The other thing is that we should talk a little bit about interests here, because Mr. Klein has a couple of interests. One, he'd like his money back. I mean, it's more than $500,000, right? But that $500,000 was also a 30% cut of his memberships, which is only a portion of his income. So I'm guessing he's probably okay. This might be an amount of money that he can walk away from. And certainly he's said that he'd be willing to do that. So it might be that the money isn't the primary motivator, which, I mean, I would love to be in a situation where 600 grand was not top of my priorities list. I'm not there. But the other consideration is, I mean, he's mad, and fair enough, right? So he may want to use the court system to get a little bit of vengeance back. And these two goals are kind of at odds, because there are some concerns. Mr. Klein raises some of these concerns that maybe BBTV doesn't have as much money as they might like, especially if they get a whole bunch of creators coming back and saying, well, I would like these fees refunded, please. And that's going to be a super huge hit. I don't know for sure. Mr. Klein has reported that they've taken out a very substantial loan. Apparently their stock price has been in decline. But the more critical thing is that apparently they sent out some notifications to people saying, hey, we won't pay you when we said we'll pay you. We're just going to delay it a little bit. Anytime somebody, like an employer or something like that says, hey, we're going to pay you just in a little while, that's a giant red flag. That says to me, oh, crap. And so let's consider the possibility of what if BBTV goes bankrupt? Well, then Mr. Klein never gets his money back. And neither do any of the other content creators who might have been harmed by this, because there's going to be a lot of different people with potential claims, potential arguments on this one. So yeah, it may not be good for those creators if BBTV ceases to exist all at once. But we don't really know what's going to happen here. I think it was, just from a tactical perspective, you got to realize that a guy with millions of followers is going to have a big voice. And when he comes and says, you guys owe me $600,000, that's something where you should maybe sit and think about it real hard. I mean, from a tactical perspective, if I was counsel there, I probably would have looked over this contract, said, I think he's right. Let's pay the man to avoid our company getting hit with this huge, huge problem. So, yeah, as I mentioned, a lot of people not the biggest fans of Mr. Klein, and I take issue with some of his legal analysis, but on basis, in terms of the fundamental conclusions of this, like what do we think happened here? On review of these contractual provisions, it looks like he's in the right. It looks like he's the guy who is owed money, and I mean, I would bet very strongly in his favor in a court case here. I think he's going to win, and we'll see. So this is an interesting case. I'm going to sort of follow it along as I can, because not that often that we get these Canadian cases that are making the news. As I mentioned, there's a choice of laws provision in the contract which says, hey, this is going to have to be heard here in Canada. So that'll be interesting. Now, this is a civil lawsuit, so it's going to take a long time to work its way through the courts, and it would not surprise me at all if we see a settlement on this one. So right now, there's going to be some tension because BBTV certainly wants Mr. Klein to stop making videos about this. I don't think he's going to, but they certainly want that, and I'm not going to purport to give him legal advice. I'm not his lawyer. I'm just a guy doing analysis on the internet. But yeah, let me know in the comments below your thoughts. I mean, hopefully I've tried to make this one a little bit more clear as to what's going on here and tried to sort of break it down. But I really think that a court is going to find that a membership is like a Google subscription and not this general other category. I think it's going to be a real tough sell. So yeah, that's my analysis. Please like this video, share it with your friends, subscribe to see more content. I also want to thank my Patreon supporters at the $50 level, the CCFR, Canada's National Firearms Association, and the Canadian Shooting Sports Association. At the $30 level, Sights and Arms Limited, Jane Babe and Luxford, and David Michaud. And at the $20 level, Lindsay Metcalf, Kyle Fox, Haywire, Gerald to the Bailey, Cameron Johnson, Andrew Elsich, and Vicky. Thank you as well to my $10 supporters who will be in the crawl immediately following. Thank you for watching. I hope this has armed you with knowledge, and yeah, hopefully this one gets resolved, because it really looks like it should. And also hope Mr. Klein's not too upset with noting that I think his analysis is incorrect in places, but I agree that he appears to be the wronged party in this one. So, all right, see you guys next time.